Welcome to the road to 1 million US dollars. Let's get right into the Bitcoin chart for today, starting on this 1 hour time frame. And then as the video moves on, I'm going to move to higher and higher time frames. One quick note here, guys, for the people that are part of the members section on YouTube here. I'm going to be uploading a long-term analysis video very shortly, so stay tuned for that. Now, let's dive into this 1 hour time frame because obviously we're trading inside a weekend here. Overall, since yesterday, we got a bit of a wick to the downside, then ended up breaking this descending line of resistance. But overall, this is still looking relatively neutral to bearish on this lower time frame. And my outlook over the weekend here is that this will basically continue throughout Saturday here, as well as Sunday. And of course, by the time that I upload tomorrow's video, the markets will likely be either opening or have already opened at that point. So then we can start expecting volatility to come back later on Sunday. Moving on to this 2 hour time frame, we have a new Fibonacci retracement all the way from this wick high down to this wick low. Overall, this is still not looking very bullish to me personally. We need to see a break above 19.4K, roughly speaking, really break that golden pocket before we can seriously start looking for another move to the upside. Overall, we are still holding above this ascending trend line. So if we keep dumping here, look for some short-term support around 117.1K. But besides that, I think we should also come back to this 4 hour time frame because potentially we are forming a falling wedge pattern. So especially if the price really keeps dumping and potentially even gets another touch of this descending trend line, or perhaps slightly higher here connecting the bodies instead of the wicks, then from there we could start looking for a move breaking this descending line of resistance, wherever that may be. Of course, I will be covering this in real time as it is happening. And whenever we end up breaking out from this falling wedge, guys, there will be a price target to the upside. The reason I have a dotted line here instead of a normal trend line is because you need to measure the price target for this pattern from the high all the way down to the low. But of course, if we end up forming a lower low here before we end up breaking out of this pattern, then keep in mind that the price target will also be a little bit higher. Okay, so that is why I have the dotted line there for now. Besides that, on this 1 day time frame, this is still looking relatively bullish. We are still holding above this ascending trend line, which is really the key thing that I'm looking at on this time frame specifically. Overall, we were in overbought territory here on the 1 day time frame and are just seeing a little bit of a reset to the downside. So that is all pretty normal stuff. Most importantly, I really do not want to see a break of this ascending trend line, guys. That will be a serious warning signal for me, because if we end up breaking this trend line, then literally the best case scenario is a bunch of sideways shopping and then another move to the upside. But really breaking one of those massive high time frame uptrends is typically not a great sign. Overall, though, again, on the 2 day time frame, this is still looking bullish. Bull flag pattern that broke out to the upside. I know I'm talking about this every single day, but the price target is still 126K in the Bitcoin price. So that is still the level that I'm targeting. Moving on to the Bitcoin liquidation heat map. First of all, on this 3 day time frame, notice how since yesterday we took out most of that liquidity to the downside, but we did leave some liquidity here. So potentially this could still get grabbed here in the short term. Keep in mind that there's also on this low time frame quite a bit of liquidity to the upside now, sitting at 119, 120, and even 121K in the Bitcoin price. So potentially when we head into the new week, we might end up targeting some of these higher levels here on the lower time frame. I'm not expecting too much from this weekend until we get close to the market open late on Sunday for us that are in Europe. Zooming out all the way to the 1 month time frame, though, in the case that you don't know, typically the Bitcoin price gets attracted to where there is the most liquidity on this chart, and right now that is to the downside at 115K. And again, there's also a bunch of liquidity at 116.5. Do not forget that there's also a bunch of liquidity to the upside here. But as I showed you, for example, on this 4 hour time frame, right now Bitcoin is in a downtrend. So we need to look for liquidity to the downside as well. And of course, if we end up breaking out of this pattern, then we start looking for liquidity to the upside to be grabbed. So once again, keep an eye on that 115K level. And actually yesterday, or maybe the day before, someone asked me like why I'm not talking about this 106K level of liquidity. And this is because there are a bunch of big pockets of liquidity in between this and before we end up reaching 105K, right? For example, we would also need to see an invalidation of this bull flag pattern. So yeah, some seriously bearish stuff would need to occur for us to actually end up taking that out. Of course, this is absolutely not impossible to hit, but first things first, we should be looking at 115K. Lastly, taking a quick look at the Bitcoin ETF flow tables. Yesterday, we saw another massive inflow into the Bitcoin ETFs of about $360 million. Again, most of that coming from the BlackRock Bitcoin ETF. So this is still having an upwards pressuring effect on the Bitcoin price. Now, as I have said a couple times on the channel before here, guys, right now we are seeing massive inflows into the Bitcoin ETFs, and this is pressuring the Bitcoin price upwards. But of course, we can also see back to back massive outflows. And you can see that things like this can reverse very fast if you start seeing these massive outflows like that. So don't start ignoring the warning signals whenever they may show up. But of course, that is not financial advice. I'm simply telling you what I'm seeing in the charts, and you can do with that information what you like. Either way, this has been today's market update. If you do end up joining the membership or not, thank you for watching once again, and I will see you tomorrow in the next one.